welcome to episode 6 of Defense Against the Dark Arts. I'm Paul Miil, and this is Defense Against the Dark Arts. Today we're going to be talking about the consistency principle, attitude, tension gaps, and I guess that's about it. So, and when I talk about the consistency principle, we're not talking about the consistency principle in accounting. For those of you who had any kind of accounting studies, it's the consistency principle in psychology, obviously. And when you think about consistency, it's the consistency of your attitudes. And attitudes come from a thing called the attitude formation theory. Now, attitude formation theory isn't anything specific. It's sort of a hodgepodge of ideas that were thrown together, like all of the soft sciences. It's not really science. It's just a bunch of ideas and models that shouldn't be taken as fact and hard reality. But the gist is, in psychology, that attitude is a positive or negative evaluation of a person or a thing. So attitude is an opinion. An opinion is just positive or negative. Like it's a logical fallacy to, again, with the same thing over and over again, with this black and white either or logical fallacy. They have the opinion as or attitude as an opinion that it's either positive or negative. I think, let me see if I could find the definition here. Okay, they define attitude as a general and lasting positive or negative opinion or feeling about a person, object, or issue. So positive or negative. Those are all the choices you get. You don't get neutral. Holy shit, who would have thought there might have been a neutral opinion? You know, you have to either love this thing or hate it. There is no in between. You know, black and white, polarization. That's the way these morons work, right? So we know attitudes aren't just positive and negative. We know attitudes are also neutral. And we also know that attitudes aren't opinions. Opinions are opinions. You know, attitudes are, what we think, what we feel, and how we act. That's an attitude. If you say, look at the attitude on that guy, are you going to look at his opinion? No, you don't see their opinion. It might be revealed through their motions, right? So, but it's not just opinion. It's opinion would be feeling, one part of that, 1/3 of what the rest of us think of attitude. It's what you think, which nobody else knows. It's what you feel, nobody else knows that, and it's what you do. And each one of those, what you think can be positive, neutral, or negative. What you say can be positive, neutral, or negative, and what you do can be positive, neutral, or negative. The word attitude means position. Like you think of an airplane's attitude. I know words have different meanings, but these are all similar and based on the same thing. Attitude is based on position, how it's angled. Now, attitude in an airplane only means that on one dimension, but still, in your attitude in terms of a person and how you think, feel, and act on something is your attitude, your position. What's your position on Obama? What's your position on Trump? It has to do with, what you think, what you feel, and what you do. The soft sciences seem to love these logical fallacies especially of the either or, the black and white, logical fallacy of polarization of extremes. Now, is that intentional? I don't know. It's just incompetence? I don't know. Probably both. I don't know. But either way, it's clearly garbage. It's mistaken. It's wrong. It's a fallacy. There are more than two choices in most things, right? Not in everything. Obviously, some things there are, but, another word that comes along that sort of fits with this is association. Association, not in terms of a group, but the making connections between two things. And associations are used a lot in manipulation and in any kind of persuasion. They try to associate positive things with negative things, or positive things to their what they want you to think positive of, and negative things to things they want you to think negative of. And if you talk to or read about this stuff, they'll use the black and white either or logical fallacy when they talk about associations, saying that associations are, let me see if I have a definition of associations. No. Yeah, but so a manipulator will think in terms of associations in terms of positive and negative. They want X to be positive and Y to be negative. They want their thing to be positive and that thing to be negative, or what they want to steer you away from to be negative, and what they want you to believe or do as positive. They don't even think in the terms of neutrality. And associations can be neutral. Like if you think of a rope, if you have a boat, you could associate ropes with boating. Now, is that a positive or neutral or a negative association? Well, it depends on who you are. If you work on a boat, it might be a neutral association because you're tired of boats, but you make money from them, so it's neutral. You might be a person who loves, racing sailboats. It might be a positive association. It might be a negative association because maybe you hate the water and you went sailing one time or boating with somebody and you hated it, right? So it could be positive, neutral, or negative depending on your situation. It doesn't have to be positive or negative. It could be neutral. And same thing, somebody else might associate ropes with rock climbing, and same thing. It could be positive, neutral, negative, or lynching. Like they had that race car thing where there's been loops tied to pull down doors for decades. Probably even, the Romans had roll up doors going back thousands of years ago, and they had loops on them to pull the rope so the door would roll up. It's called a Roman blind. And, these idiots associating, a rope tied in a loop with lynching. That's the only loops that have ever been used in ropes. You tie a bow line to tie a boat off. Oh, you're tying a noose. You shouldn't be doing that. It's, insensitive. It's ridiculous. Ropes are tied in loops all the time. And if you want to associate it with something for some type of a social justice narrative, well, then you're trying to manipulate people because, you're trying to create that association in other people's minds when it doesn't exist. And most people are neutral when it comes to ropes or loops, because most people who, work with ropes use them all the time to, you go canoeing, you tie a loop in it, you tie it off. You don't think, oh, I'm tying a noose. Oh, I better not be careful the knot I'm tying. It's ridiculous. So associations, you could think of another association would be like a joystick. You associate joysticks. I associate them with like games, video games, helicopters, and airplanes, like jet planes or whatever. And, is that a positive, neutral, or negative? It's neutral, pretty much all three. Like I don't really play video games so much anymore. I used to find them really enjoyable. Now it's kind of boring, but so video games. I used to work in helicopters, and same kind of thing. Not a big deal. Airplanes, never really been in jet fighters or anything like that with joysticks, but so it's a neutral association. It's not a positive or negative, and so this attitude formation theory, I think, is I know it's not one theory. It's a bunch of crap that's thrown together, but it's pretty much just garbage. So going back to the consistency principle, it's a model where what you think, what you say, and what you do are consistent with each other. Now, there's times when people, they say things that they don't believe, or they do things they don't believe, or they, they contradict, and then you get a dissonance there. So if there's the model goes that if there's an inconsistency between those three, between what you think, what you say, and what you do, your brain will try to equalize the others to bring it into harmony again. So manipulators know this, and they're going to use the consistency principle against us. The idea is if you say something often enough, you'll believe it. And it's like group chanting or any, it's pretty creepy when you hear people chanting in mass or, whatever slogans all yelling. But so if people are saying things that are inconsistent with their beliefs, you got to wonder, well, how does lying fit into this? Well, lying, I think, is different because you're intentionally saying something that you don't believe. Like you think of a slimy saleswoman trying to sell you some piece of junk. She's been hawking that stuff day after day after day. Do you think she honestly starts to believe that the crap she's selling is the best crap? It's the world's greatest piece of crap. Do you think she believes that? No, I'm sure she doesn't. She's been selling that crap day in, day out. Is it the world's greatest crap? No, it's not. A politician that goes and talks from the mic, and talking about the corruption, or trying to avoid talking about the corruption. Do you think they actually believe that they're not corrupt? Is that going on in there? Well, maybe. I don't think so. I think they know they're corrupt because they're doing the corruption. They're not that stupid, right? So, and same thing with the news media. They're pushing a lot of lies and propaganda. Do you think they actually begin to believe the stuff? Well, if you actually look at some of these journalists and reporters, I think they're pretty stupid. So I think they do actually start begin believing their own hype and lies. So some people, it works, and some people it doesn't, right? Maybe the news reporters, no, they're aware, I'm sure of it. They're a bunch of scumbags. So there's a gradient of liars. Some people are obviously much better at lying than others. They're better at acting and deceiving. It's a gradient skill from horrible liars to journalists. There are people who are masters of deception, and they clearly separate their words from their actions, from their beliefs. So I think not cognitive dissonance. The fuck are we talking about? There are people who are masters of deception who clearly can separate what they think from what they say and what they do. So is there, truth to this consistency principle where what you say, think, and do have to be consistent? Well, no. Obviously, you watch the news. Well, again, some of these guys do believe it, but there are people who lie and they know they're lying and they don't start believing their crap. So I don't think the consistency principle is 100%, but it's just a model, and maybe it works sometimes. Maybe it works on everybody sometimes, and everybody not sometimes. So the fact that humans are such good liars, we talked about this before in another video. There's no lie detectors that work. They're not allowed to be used in court. It's a smoke and mirror show. So if anybody hooks you up to one, lie away. But there's some validity, I think, to deception. If they can tell if there's deception, but they may not know the details of, the deception or what the exact, they know you might be deceptive, but it might be something that's going on internally in your mind that, there's conflict going on there. So they don't know if the words or what you're saying are deceptive or something that you're thinking about is deceptive. That's why they can't really use it in court. But body language experts, you talk to them, right? The gist with body language experts or body language is that there's tells. We all have tells, and a tell could be, and it might be, and you might scratch your nose, you might, twitch one eye, whatever. But a tell isn't indicative of anything. You need to have clusters of tells happening all within the same kind of time. Or close together. That's what they call a cluster, because they're all happening close together. And then that can start indicating something, right? So there is tells. So your body is responding physically to something, something you're trying to hide or something, you're being deceptive about or whatever. So but it's so coarse that we can't fine tune it. So there's the rub, right? So a possible reason why there are tells in our body language that, aren't really usable. They might be a little bit, but is this consistency principle model. And so the deal is, again, our brains will try to rationalize, apparently our brains will try to rationalize thoughts, our thoughts and our beliefs to match our words and our actions to the point of changing our beliefs. If we do something that is against what we believe, against our values, we might try to blame somebody else. Say, well, they told me to do it. They made me do it. Or say, I was forced to do it. We might justify those actions by getting angry at, the people we did things to. You know what I mean? They made me do it. I didn't want to do it, but they made me do it. And, they deserved worse than what I did to them, whatever. So your brain might start trying to justify in your mind your actions to get rid of that tension of the dissonance of you doing something against what you believe. And this is the thing that the theory of manipulation, I guess, if there is one. The idea is that not all three of those are equally balanced. What you think, what you say, and what you do. They are almost an inverted scale. You would think what you believe and what you think has the most power over what you think and what you believe. But apparently it's not. Apparently if you act, if somebody can get you to act to do a bunch of things, then your brain will try to justify it. And if you keep doing what you don't believe, then eventually your brain will start, trying to relieve that tension somehow by getting you to sort of believe what you're doing. And it's the same thing goes with talking. So if you say it over and over and over again, I don't think speaking has as much power. According to the scale, it's speaking has some influence, apparently minimal, but what you do has a great influence over what you believe. So if you're doing something that you don't believe in, and you keep doing it over and over and over again, you have tension, internal tension building up in your brain. And for some people, they will begin to rewire their beliefs to match their actions. And this is a pretty scary thing. I don't know how accurate. Again, it's social sciences, so I don't put much weight in a lot of this stuff. Maybe we can, experiment on people ethically somewhere sometime, or join the CIA and not do it ethically and just abduct people in black vans and torture them and see what happens. But so one of the secrets of manipulation or brainwashing and conditioning is to get people to do things and to make them think that they did those actions on their own. So if clearly there's nobody around that forced them to do it, and if you were sort of manipulate the person, or you were manipulated into a position where you did something that you normally wouldn't do or didn't believe that you would do, and you're doing it because of the circumstances, that has a profound effect apparently on rewiring your belief system, because there's nobody else you can believe. So if you don't think anybody else put you in that situation, if you believe you're whatever, then you have some mental anguish there. So you begin to rewire your beliefs to match your actions. So it's very subtle. And again, a lot of this I don't have too much weight on it, but I mean, again, maybe some of the stuff does work, or maybe it did work on some people. I don't know. So the concept, just again, consistency principle is thought, word, action. And in the order, action is more powerful than word. Word is more powerful than thought. So beliefs can be changed, so they say. But again, everybody's different. Some people are more closed-minded. Some people are more open-minded, which makes some people more vulnerable to deeper manipulation. But nobody thinks they're the bad guy, and yet the world's full of horrible people who do horrible things. So how does this line up, right, with the consistency principle? Well, people will rationalize their actions, right, and even change their perceptions. And this is where you observe this. You see it. You see it when people are, like some of the examples I've given about these crazy people that I've talked to. But people will change their perceptions. People will change their perception of reality so that everything lines up to make sense again, at least to them. And this is done to the point of disregarding reality, disregarding conflicting evidence, from the objective real world. They'll replace it with assumptions and their mental constructs, making the person delusional. This is literally a mental illness, right? But it's apparently a very common one, because a lot of people I talk to, seem to do that. Maybe I do it. I don't know. If I do it, I hope somebody would point it out, and I'd be like, motherfucker, that's right. Better keep a close eye on that one. I don't know. But so that's the deal. You got to watch for people who just disregard reality. Well, I don't believe that, so I'm going to use my assumption and believe my assumption and disregard evidence from the real world, firsthand exposure, whatever. It's out there, and it's pretty common. So what causes people to change with the consistency principle? It's tension, mental tension. Now, tension can be in a lot of different forms, but it's the fundamental force of change when it comes to manipulation. And it's the heart of virtually all persuasion techniques. So tension is, if you think about it, when you feel tension, it's an emotion. It's a feeling, right? And there's also physical tension. Your muscles will tense up involuntarily, but tension is an uncomfortable thing that makes you want to reduce the tension. Now, tension is created by a gap between two things. You need to create a distance to create tension, a gap between two things. And there's always two parts to tension. Like grab an elastic band or rope or something and you pull it tight, that's tension. So you need two ends. You need two hands to be pulling on that rope to pull it tight to create tension. And the tensions that people use are, what they want and what they don't have, what they like, what they don't like, what's good, what's bad, what you think of yourself, what others think of you, what you do, what you believe. These are all tensors, tension gaps that you can be manipulated with, or that the manipulator will try to use to manipulate you. A manipulator will try to create a tension gap. Maybe you are happy with what you have and you don't want something, but they might try to create a tension by trying to make you think or implying or just asserting that you want this thing, trying to create that tension gap. And if you're happy with what you have, there is no tension because you don't really want it. And it's a failure on their part. Manipulators fail a lot of the time, right? But sometimes they don't. So sometimes they'll try to create tension that doesn't exist. And this is happening all the time on the internet, in the news. It's like clickbait. They create tension to try to get people emotional and try to create tension where there isn't tension, try to fabricate and exaggerate stories or give misleading articles without all the facts when they know full well that when you examine the full facts that there's no real story there. But how are they going to report on something that isn't a story? It's better for them, money-wise or clickbait-wise, just to put out some bogus crap that they can retract later on or update as new information comes in. But before that information comes in and becomes widely known, they're making all kinds of wild assertions, right? Which is not news, and that's so popular, so prevalent now. It's horrific. But anyway, so the bare core of most persuasion methods is utilizing tension, creating tension. Now you can have a tension gap. Tension is the gap between the two ends of something, right? So the attention gap could be the now versus the future, and where you are versus where you want to be. Maybe you want to stay where you are, and it's going to take energy or some kind of attention to maintain where you are, to stay on top of the hill, So there's a tension that they can create. Or maybe you want to be somewhere better than where you are. So there's a tension there to change where you are now to where you want to be. So that was the now versus future gap. But one of the fundamental, most powerful gaps is the needs gap. Now, needs, you think of the needs, what you have for life. You need air, right? You need your blood circulating. Those are the most fundamental ones, right? You need food and water and sleep and shelter and safety. And there's this guy Maslow, this twat, he came up with this chart, his model of his needs hierarchy, and needs will take a priority over all other tension creating gaps. Yeah, so they're the most motivating. It's easy to create a needs gap, to distract somebody from their higher needs. All you need to do is threaten their lower needs. So you could if you go after their food, their sleep, their health, that's a priority all over all the other gaps, or the gaps, all the other higher needs. You can go after their safety, their security. You can go after their self-esteem. That's a very popular one to go after, because if you go after the self-esteem, then everything above that sort of collapses. The next most powerful gap of tension gap would be the values gap. After your needs is your values, and your values provide me rules for living. They maintain our sense of personal integrity, that allow us to live into groups of people with shared values harmoniously. They tell us what we shouldn't do. They tell us what's right and what's wrong, more or less, what's more or less important. When our values are broken, we feel a sense of wrongness, right? If somebody does something that you feel is wrong, that you shouldn't do, right? Obviously, you're going to have a sense of wrongness. If others violate, if others violate our values, then we feel a sense of contempt and anger towards them. When we breach our own values, this is a pretty powerful one that hardcore manipulators will attach, is if you breach your own values, you feel shame, guilt, and the retribution of others in the group. And cults will utilize this one all the time, but we'll get into cults maybe later. So if others breach your values, you feel a sense of anger and contempt. If you breach your own values, you feel a sense of shame, guilt, fear of retribution from your group that share those same values, because you've broken your own values. We're a very socially driven creature. Again, this doesn't apply to everybody equally, but a values gap is a very powerful tensor to manipulate somebody, and it's the only thing more powerful than that is the needs gap. So your needs, if somebody attacks your needs, it's easy to manipulate somebody. If somebody attacks your values, that's the next most powerful method of attack. The vector of attack to manipulate somebody is go after their values. If you can't go for their needs, if they're far away from you or whatever, you go for their values. Distance, right? So in the next order of power, of tension, is the goals gap. So we use goals to achieve our needs. So in a roundabout way, if somebody attacks your goals, then they're attacking your needs, and that's the most powerful way of attacking you. So if we don't achieve our goals, or we seem to be behind schedule, we feel frustrated and annoyed, and we'll revise our goals when we believe there's very little chance in succeeding in those goals with the resources or whatever you have at the time. So revising those goals creates a great tension for you to change course. It's an admission of failure, and a lot of people can't handle that, so they would do anything to achieve those goals. So that is a vector of attack that a manipulator will use. If they know what your goals are, and they know your goals are hard to achieve, it's like in Hollywood, the actresses, they have these unrealistic goals of being a star. There's millions of actresses that aren't going to make it, and there's a lot of people who prey on those actresses because they know their goals are unattainable, and these girls don't want to give up and go back to Wisconsin as a failure, so they'll do whatever. So these guys hook them into, well, maybe just do this little art film where you're naked and you're having sex. Next thing they're porn stars, right? Maybe maybe that's what they want, maybe that's not what they want, but these are tools of manipulation to go after somebody's goals, especially if those goals are writers. You see all these snakes, going after people who want to publish books, right? Maybe not so much now because people could self-publish so much easier, but there used to be people that would, well, maybe they still are, probably are, I'm sure, go after people who, want to publish their books, right? They'd, try this and, pay us to edit it. And, not to say that editors are, not valid. I mean, editors are probably, worth the money because they got to read through all these crappy books. But I mean, there's a lot of, unscrupulous people who take advantage of people who they know, because the majority of people who write books are not going to be successful. And it's the same thing, I guess, today would be with like YouTube videos or, podcasts or anybody trying to do any of that kind of stuff. Millions of people trying to prey on those because the chances of anybody's podcasts or YouTube videos being successful is infinitesimally small. There's so many videos being uploaded and so many podcasts being uploaded, and, so people will try to prey on your goal of doing that, right? And people are figuring that people who are scared of failure will like, yeah, I'll just give this guy $5,000 and it's it's going to help me, whatever. When in fact it won't, or they're just taking your cash and spending it on beer and hookers. But an interesting thing, if you look at really successful people, they are not scared of failure. I mean, successful and confident people have less issue with failure than a lot of other people, and I think it's because they try so many things and they fail so often, and they learn from their failures that eventually they start getting ahead. Whereas a lot of people who are so afraid of failure or accepting failure, they won't let go, right? And so the tension of failure spurs them on to greater heights, right? But cutting your goals and your losses might be a virtue, but those who cling to a goal despite the low probability of succeeding, and they might still succeed, but so there's both sides to this. There's nature's random. There's no absolutes. There is no right. There is no wrong. Maybe some guys or people who cling to their the like musicians. You see some of these musicians who make it. The chances of them succeeding was so infinitely small, yet they stuck to it and they made it. Where there's probably a million other musicians for every one of those who succeeded, who stuck with it, who didn't succeed. So it might work for some, it might not work for others, and maybe sometimes. It's hard to say. There's no right or wrong. Sometimes it might be good to cut your losses and, stop being, a musician and try to, get into whatever, maybe engineering, audio engineering or, who knows what, roadies or go back to school, become for maths and become a vice president of some kind of a high-tech company, right? But denying your goals, These are tools that the manipulator will a vector of attack that the manipulator will use, especially if for going after your goals, if you're of a very slim chance of succeeding. All right, so tension. There's positive and negative tension. A manipulator will try to entice you with positive tension, the carrot, and if they don't succeed, now it's a lot of complex. It's not a simple black and white thing. It's not. There's many different layers, but a manipulator might try both in the same person depending on what the situation is. They might use a positive tension to pull you towards something they want you to notice, and they might use a negative tension to push you away from something they don't want you to notice. Right? So you get these multi-level things, but generally they wouldn't try just to use a negative tension, the stick, right, to push you somewhere, because when you push somebody, you don't know which direction they're going to go, but if you pull them, they're going to go the direction you pull them. So they might try, pushing and pulling, pushing you away from, things they don't want you to notice or read or pay attention to, and pulling you towards at the same time, right, depending on how complex the manipulation is, right? But anticipation can definitely be positive. And you think of an example of, well, how can anticipation be? Well, your first kiss, you know what I mean? You sit on the couch and, well, I don't want to go down. Maybe you're on a roller coaster and you hear the click, 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 click of the roller coaster just before you go over. That's positive. You're getting there's a lot of tension. You're building up tension, but it's positive tension, right? Because you're getting excited before that big drop. But or anticipation could be negative, right? The tension could be a negative tension if you're about to get into trouble. You got caught for something you did, and you're up Schitt's Creek, right? So, but in both cases, the tension, the waiting, can be the worst part from compared to what finally results. Like the going down the hill might be exhilarating, but for some people, the tension of going up might be more impactful. Like how often, you think back to going down a roller coaster and you go down the hill. Yeah, you can picture going over the hill, but the tension of going up, chicking, 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 it's a lot more, visceral. Another aspect that the manipulator will look into is relevant. What's relevant and what's a distraction. So there are distracting tensions that pull targets away from the consideration of the manipulator. The manipulator is trying to present something or try to influence you or try to do their magic on you. And if you get distracted, well, that's a big problem for the manipulator, right? So attention is a major, attention and distraction are major issues for the manipulator. So one of the easiest way, of course, knowing this to not be manipulated is to not pay attention. Don't go on social media if somebody's trying to manipulate on social. Don't watch the news if the news is full of lies and manipulations. Don't watch it. Don't buy the newspapers of that are full of crap. It's garbage. So don't pay attention. Don't give them your attention, and they can't do anything to you. They can't manipulate you, right? And that's their biggest fear, is you not paying attention. They want your attention, so they're going to try all kinds of stuff. So it's more effective for a manipulator to pull you to the point where they want instead of pushing you away. But again, that's a simplification, because there could be using multiple levels at the same time, trying to pull you towards. In fact, that's the push-pull, right? They try to get you to look over here, don't look over there. Look over here, don't look over there. Listen to this, don't listen to that. These are the good guys, those are the bad guys. This is what you should listen to. We should censor them. There's another concept that deals with tension. If the tension is so great and you're in a situation where you can't release that tension, if it's too much for you, they call it, grasp at straws, right? And it's called satisficing. Satisficing is, does it suffice? Is it sufficient? Is it satisfactory? Satisficing. So if you're, drowning out in the water, and somebody throws you a wet noodle, you're going to reach for it. It may not save your life, but it might. You're not going to not reach for it, right? If it has a chance of saving you, even though it's not the best solution, right? So if the tension is strong enough, you're not going to search for the best solution. You're under a great amount of tension. So you're going to grab at the first thing that comes along that might do the job. Even if there's better solutions out there, like an actual rope or whatever. Geez, I'm talking a lot about ropes on this for some reason. But, yeah. So if there's a good rope, you'd rather have that. But if there's no rope available, or you don't notice that there's a rope available and somebody throws you some straw, you're going to grasp for that straw, right? So, tension is emotion, and emotion happens in your brain during tension, right? So it of course, everything depends on whether we're tensed. I don't know if these are words. If we're tensed by desire or negative emotions. So if your emotions are ramped up, hormones are released when you become emotional, like dopamine and adrenaline, and I can't remember this. Obviously, some other ones, but they'll trigger your instinctive responses and reduce your cognitive, rational thinking. So this is totally something that a manipulator wants. They want you to be emotional. They don't want you thinking rationally. They don't want you being Spock. They want you being hysterical and screaming and emotional and releasing all these hormones in your brain, in your body, so that you are not. Why is that flashing? So you're not rational, right? Because it's easier to manipulate somebody who's not rational, especially if you're the one instigating their emotions. This is wrong. Look what this guy did, right? We gotta, right? Manipulators want you in manipulators want you in an emotional state, not a calm, rational one. So people, respond to, you get emotional over clickbait. Now, I don't mean just literal clickbait. I mean all kinds of clickbait in the news or wherever. I call it all clickbait. Anything that's, garbage that's trying to, draw your attention, right? It often they'll try to trigger your sense of unfairness or, justice, situations, that will get you emotional, right? There's like doomcasters now, so that people might be, pushing doom. Oh, the world's going to end. There's always been Chicken Little talking about the sky's falling, right? And different, they get investors. You've read any investing books, they always talk about the Chicken Littles and the guys, the doomcasters. Now they're called doomcasters, right? But yeah, or the promise of love, all these sexy women. Oh, I'm reaching. I got so much junk email from these Russian brides. I don't know how they got me email, but it's. Or maybe they're Indian, I don't know. But, so much crap that you get. Spam and clickbait. Oh, look at this, right? But we all know that it's not real, right? We all know they're just sharks, right? Baiting you with candy and rainbows, right? Or they're poking you with a stick to try to get you upset. Oh, look at this injustice, and if you calmly and rationally and look into it, you're like, oh, Well, that's not really that bad. There was no injustice done there. Everything on the surface, it looks like it. The way you framed it, yeah, it looks bad. But then when you look at the details and, the full story and context of what actually happened, there was no injustice. It was, just happenings. Some people who were bad were penalized, right? That's justice. But they try to make it seem like the people who were bad weren't were unjustly penalized. They don't mention all the stuff that they're doing, So another aspect, probably the last one we'll talk about here, is urge. The deep urge. Urge is more of a deeper control mechanism for your brain, right? It pressures you into, important survival instincts such as eating, sleeping, fighting, or, sex, right? Reproducing, right? So these urges, they're deeper. And if a manipulator can get your urges, to control you with your urges, to steer you a certain way, right? That's they're bypassing your rational and your emotional, going right down to the urges, right? That you're not even thinking. You're just like, oh yeah, I want a hamburger, or oh yeah, whatever. I'm not gonna, but they do, right? So most, I don't know if I need to talk about. Yeah, most social justice is just clickbait, pushing false narratives on you to create tension. And to get you to do what they want you to do, which is, first off, you think, what's the point of all these clickbait, the shiny sparkles and everything else? It's to get you to pay attention to them. Like, that is the number one thing that manipulators want. If it's slimy saleswomen or salesmen or whoever, they want you to pay attention to them. If you don't pay attention to them, they got nothing. So if you do pay attention to them, they got you. They got the hook. They start reeling you in. And then they want you to support them and give them money or whatever, depending if it's a movement or if it's some kind of a sales thing, right? But once the manipulator gains your trust, usually they get that by pretending that they share your values, and they can just sort of do this with this general set of values and put those out there, and just wait, right? It's like fishing. They wait for the people who have those values to get upset from what they've planted, the bait they put out there. And those are the people that will respond to their bait. And then those are the people who are going to start trusting them because they're like, yeah, look at the values we put out there. So the manipulator often tries to pretend that they share your values. That's, and then they'll try to find, once they get your trust, they'll try to create, tension between two things. To create movement, to create change in you, could be an uncomfortable present for a desirable future, or it could be trying to maintain a desirable present, or whatever. They're gonna try to create change, tension to create change. They're gonna create tension to create change in you. They're going to create tension to create change in you, or try to create change in you. So anyways, this change is obviously not what you want. It's what they want you to do. They'll think of how, when, and where you'll move and design a tension system to move you in the direction they want, like a puppet on a string. So that's it for today, episode 6. Like and subscribe, and stay tuned for episode 7.